With the help of Hashem, we are learning Sukah Daf Dalid. We left off on Daf Gimel, Amid Bey, second to last line and bottom of the Amid by the two dots. The entire Daf Dalid, the ganze Daf Dalid is going to be focusing on many scenarios where the Sukah is not kosher as is, because it does not have the correct dimensions. As we will learn, it's going to be too tall, the schach is above 20 amas, the sukkah is beneath 10 tfachim, and the various halachic solutions that we are to use to rectify and to make this sukkah kosher. So we're going to begin by learning height reduction. Then we're going to start learning about a very important din of, it's called psol hayotzim min hasukkah nidoin kesukah. That once you already have a kosher sukkah, the example will be, you have a 3-wall sukkah, and the schach is protruding beyond the walls. You are allowed, as long as you are under that schach, you are allowed to eat there. Even though from your perspective, you don't have 3 walls, right? Because you are on the other side, you only see 1 wall. Once the schach is rendered kosher, then any part, now there are exceptions, but that's the rule, any part under the schach is deemed to be properly under the schach. We're going to have applications of solutions based on the rule of doifen akuma, and that's one of the many halacha l'Moshe Missinais. Doifen akuma means the law of the bent wall, and we will see today various applications. We're going to have an application of the rule of lavud, which isn't only connected to sukkah, it's a general rule. Lavud literally means annexing, and that is when you have 2 items that are within each other less than 3 tvachim. You don't have 3 tvachim or more. It's pachus migimel. It's considered annexed, it's considered touching. How that will be part of solutions for the various challenges we'll have today. We're going to learn the din and application of the din of good asik mechitzta, that we halacha l'Moshe Missinai, that once you already have a wall, a halachic wall, even if the wall ends at a certain height, we view it as if the wall goes all the way up. And we'll see how that is going to be used for a solution. We're going to have the concept of a diyoimad, of a double post. If you remember in Shabbos and in Eruvin, we spoke about the pasei berois. We'll chazer it, God willing, in today's daf. And over there, the pasei berois was 1 amma by 1 amma. We're going to learn a similar concept, but here by a sukkah you only need to have 1 tefach. And phenomenal scenarios. People that who don't have pictures will do just fine. I do want to point out that some pictures were deemed so necessary that in our Gemara, I'm going back to the traditional Gemaras, you'll see on Daf Daled you have 2 pictures, which are very helpful. But aside of that, for those who have the new Svarim with pictures, that's going to be helpful to visualize the many scenarios. So let us start on Daf Gimel Amid Beis, 2 lines before the bottom of the Amid. Let's focus on the opening. The opening Mishnah, the rule on Daf Beis was about a super tall sukkah. Sukkah meaning schach. Sukkah shehi gevoya l'mayla me'esrim amma. Chachamim hold that it's possible. However, says the Gemara, hoysa gevoya me'esrim amma. And you want to create a solution. And the easiest solution for you is not to lower the schach, which you can do, gesund to hate. You don't want to touch the schach, you don't want to bother yourself. You want to heighten the floor of the sukkah. Now we're not even mentioning yet how much of the floor of the sukkah needs to be heightened. That will be a big part of today's daf. But here we're going to focus on the material. The material, that picture is not shaykh to what we're learning. Okay, leave it up, it doesn't bother me. That what material is going to be considered a halachic reduction. Case number 1. You're putting mattresses, you're putting cushions, you're putting materials that are of value that people normally do not leave on the floor. And even therefore says the Gemara, loy havemit, it is not a halachically valid reduction. Why? Zakt Rashi, look inside the last line in the Amud, that's key. Because she'ein soifoy lo niach sham kol zayin. These materials are valuable, and the rule is not that you won't be an exception. I don't even care if you will be the exception. But ladaito, as we'll see, people don't leave mattresses and cushions on the floor for the whole 7 days. And this is important. And now we're going to learn about verbal nullification. Even if the person verbally abandoned it. Lukulu goes to the 7 days. Sukah is minatoida 7 days. The person says, I am being mevatel. It means after Sukkah I'll take it back. But I'm verbally saying that for the next 7 days I'm mevatel it over here. That verbal declaration has no halachic validity because the batla daitoi eitzel kol adam. That there's a concept that's said many times that my intent is invalidated because the majority of the people don't have such intents. So I don't have the koyach to remove myself from the eitzel kol adam. Now, let's go case number 2. We're going to go to items that have less value, so it's more common for people to be mevatel it. And the next item is going to be either teven. Teven is straw. But what's important here is that the person spread straw on the ground of the sukkah. I'm just being practically, the schach wasn't like 40 amas high in the air. You know, the schach was 21 amas, was 20 amas and a bit. All you need to do is you need to heighten the ground, and you had enough straw, and you did that. And you verbally said, I am leaving it here for the 7 days. So teven ubitloi here, unlike kodem and ksasois, batla daitoi, we don't say that. Here says the Gemara, have a miut. It's a halachically accepted reduction. Next case, the kolchchein, if you have offer is dust, which is worth even less than teven, and you were mevatel it, then for sure it's a valid bitul, and you're good. That is a height reduction. Now, hold on. What happens if teven ve'ein asid lefanoisai? What happens if you have straw? You know that you will not remove it. Rashi writes later, it's known. Now, whether it's enough for you to know, or whether it has to be known, that's an important nuance. But let's go with the words of Rashi. It's known that you will not remove it, but, the owner did not make a verbal bittul. He put straw. It's known he's not going to remove it because he has so much straw, doesn't need all that straw, but he didn't make a verbal bittul, or va'afar stam, even less, he put dust. He did not make a verbal bittul. And it's not even known whether he'll need that dust. Guys, in those days, many people made their floors out of offer. So, some people could have used it. Here, we don't even know. And we're putting these two scenarios on the same platform, on the same madrega. In other words, straw that has more value, if he didn't make a verbal bittul, and it's not known that he will leave it there, it's not good. That's clear. But when you know he's going to leave it there, or in a case of dust where you don't know, ain't no yodua, but it's dust, it's the least valuable item, says the Gemara, that is really a machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan. And we have to become familiarized in the breadth of Torah Shebal Peh, and how the Gemara is medama mils ila mils. Now, where do we find the machlokes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbanan so far away from Sukkah? It's a whole different topic. And that's the topic of tumas oil. That when you have a corpse, so there are times that we say that tuma retzutza oila ad l'rakia, which means that if there's a corpse, even if the corpse is inside something, if you don't have a airspace in the amount of a tefach between the top of the corpse and its cover, so let's say someone is buried in the earth and the coffin disintegrates, so there's earth laying on the corpse. We don't say that the earth creates some sort of mechitza that does not allow the tumah to go up. It does go up. It goes up all the way until the heavens. But if you have, let's say, you have a corpse that's in a home, then of course, if you enter the home, you become tummy b'tumas oil. But if you go over the home, you won't become tummy. Why won't you become tummy? Because the tumah is contained. It doesn't go beyond the roof. What is needed? What we need is to have one tefach of ear space in between the corpse, the top of the corpse, and the ceiling. If you have that, it contains the tumah. If you don't have that, then the tumah is boikeya v'oil. Here the case was, there was a mace in a house, and for whatever reason, the home was filled with different materials. Same concept. If we will view those materials to be bottled and they will halachically be considered that which is going to remain there, well, that clogs up the airspace. That will be a chumrah. That's going to affect that the tumah will go up, Or even if something is there, but if we will consider it something that will be removed, so we view it as if it's not there, then here will be a leniency. Then we will say, that there is a tefach, and therefore the tumah is going to be stopped by the ceiling, by the roof. So says the Mishnah in Ahalois, bayis that has a corpse in it, and shemilohu teven, and then now it was filled up with straw, or with tzeroides, with pebbles. So let's go to the same concepts about verbal bittul, not verbal bittul. Ubitloi, if there was a verbal bittul, it's not kadam eksasis, and it's b'chlal, you can't compare kadam eksasis because in the sukkah it's on the floor, people step on it. The cases is straw and pebbles. Verbal, nothing to talk about. Mevutel, since it's mevutel, therefore we will view these items that they will always remain in the home. There is no poiseach tefach. Anyone who walks over the house will become tamei. Tumah tzutza is boikaz v'oila ad l'rakia. That's the end of the Mishnah. Now infers the Gemara, bitloi in. You have to be verbally be mevatel it. Loi bitloi loi. That is the way it sounds from the Mishnah, and you're right. But v'tani Allah, and therefore we had on that on a brayso that quoted another shita. Rabbi Yossi Omer, that if you have straw, and we know v'ein asid lefanoisai, we know that you will not remove it. It's mamish like the case we had here by Sukah. Even when there is no verbal bittul, then it is just like offer. By offer, even if there is no verbal bittul, and we don't even know whether you'll leave it there or not, stam, then it's also batul. In other words, just to infer from that offer v'asad lefanoisai, if it's the cheapest material that is subject to the highest susceptibility of it becoming bottled, but we know definitely you will remove it, then hareu kestam teven v'loy bottle, which is mamish moededik. So mamish, like here, like over there, that these two scenarios of teven ve'ein asad lefanoisai or afar stam machloikes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbanan. Next case, guys, the gimel from the Mishpat. You have a sukkah that's above the schach. Even the lowest part of the schach is above 20 amas. But here the advantage is v'hutzin yardim etoichaf amo. You have the leaves of the palm branches, right? So the tips of the leaves that are hanging down are within the right shiur. If we're going to view the schach as the tips of the hutzin, then you don't have to make any reduction. But if you can argue that how can you count it from the hutzin? I don't know how good the picture is. This is not a good picture because we can't garnish then. It didn't help me. All right. Okay, episode helped. So the Gemara says like this: Im silasa meruba mechamasa. Make believe you take away all of the schach that's lamaila me'esrem amma. Even though it would fall down. But if you would be able just to leave the hutzin, if it would create more shade than sunlight, which is gavaldik, so then it's kosher. The fact that the hutzin are only physically there because they're hanging off their source, which is lamayla me'esrem amma, why should that bother me? I'm not counting that as the schach. But ve'im lav, if you have the tzalasa meruba mechamasa, but to get there you have to include the parts of the schach that are lamayla me'esrem amma, then psula gavaldik. Next case. Now you have a sukkah that's exactly the minimum height. 10 tfachim. But the type of schach is not the mats, which is apsanai chidish. The type of schach is, the good old branches with leaves and they're hanging down. Now what would you think? Now if you count the schach from the bottom parts of the hutzin, you don't have the minimum height. So the first approach will be that we correlate the din that we learned above and the din over here. It's if the chutzin themselves create more shade than sunlight, in our case, it's going to be puzzle. Because the chutzin are lamata miyutfachim. If they don't create enough shade by themselves, so we can discount them, that will be the first approach. So savar abaya lemeimar, consistent to the previous ruling that im chamasa meruba mitzilasa, which means that the chutzin themselves don't create kosher schach. We could discount them. We only count the schach, the higher part of the schach, and that's exactly 10 tefachim or higher, so it's going to be kosher. So Amalei Rava, no, it cannot be consistent with the previous ruling, and because there is another issue we have to contend with, and that is Ha Dira Seruchahi. Remember this rule. I know sometimes Serucha means it smells bad. It doesn't mean it smells bad. It means it's unpleasant. In other words, when we came to this minimum height, it has to be 10 tfachim, because any sukkah that's any indoor environment, even arai, that's beneath 10 tfachim, it's very uncomfortable to be there. So even if that which is protruding beneath, that which is going down, is not in itself halachically kosher schach, so what? So what? It's called a sukkah, serucha. It's a unpleasant sukkah. The ein adam dar bedira serucha, not even in a way of arai. Gewaldig. Okay, now we are starting with the pictures, and for this one, the picture that we have in the Gemara is gewaldig. Hoya hoysa gevoya me'esrem amo. Now, by the way, here we're speaking about raising up the ground without getting into the karim ksasois, without getting into the tevin, into the offer. We're going to use an example of something that's more permanent than karim ksasois, and therefore it does not even need bittul, and that's a practical case, and that's going to be a platform. We're speaking about a platform that's made out of stones and cement, and any platform that's made out of stones and cements are stam not going to be removed. So that we don't have to deal about. So you built a platform. Now guys, if you built the platform in the entirety of the floor of this sukkah, and once you measure from the top of the platform, you have the schach now not beyond the maximum height, of course there's no issue. Nothing to talk about. Here, the beauty will be is that the platform does not cover the entirety of the sukkah. That will be the case. And here the Gemara is going to give two examples. And from these two examples, we will chap on ourselves everything else. Example number one is, and before we read it inside the Gemara, look at the picture in the Gemara, the top picture in the Gemara. Now, let's not forget, like Rashi writes this explicitly, and we're talking that we Hasidim to have 4 walls, 100%. But when the Chazal are speaking about Sukkah, is the common Sukkah there was a Sukkah that was walled off from 3 sides in their entirety, even though that's not needed. It's one side was left open for people to enter and to exit, the Pesach, and you have 3 walls. And that's the top picture. Now, the first case will be another din that we learned in last daf. Don't forget that. The minimum length and width is 7 by 7 amas. Rashi mentions 7 and 7 and a bit. We'll leave that, we'll speak about the bit, but not right now. But generally 7 by 7. We're speaking about a platform for sure that has the 7 by 7. If not, there's nothing to talk about. That means
7 by 7 tvachim.
I didn't say amas, and if I said it, I stand corrected. Okay, 7 by 7. So yeah, it's taba. I think the picture in the Gemara is better than this picture. The estaba has the minimum size of the width and the length, and when you measure from the top until the schach, you're good. But there's another thing we have to focus on. A sukkah needs 3 walls. We'll learn 2 walls and epis. Okay, but it needs 3 walls. So in the first case, look how beautiful they built the estaba. The estaba is touching all of the 3 walls. The estaba is touching all of the 3 walls. Says the Gemara, Hoysam Gevoya Esrem Amo. The schach is higher. You have to rectify it. You're rectifying it by making the reduction. How are you making a reduction? You're not lowering the schach, which is also beruchn. You're so beautiful. In other words, you go up. Don't schlep kedusha down. Go a tefach above. So you build the estaba.
For Torah, right? With the kids.
With the kid, all the beautiful stories. You get up. You elevate yourself. So if it's kinegen doifen ho'emtzoi alpene kula, the doifen ho'emtzoi is the one in our Gemara that's all the way in the top. And in other words, it's going all the way to the end. It's touching that wall, but it's alpene kula. It's going to the right. It's going to the left. Bottom line is, it's that the Itztaba area in itself has 3 walls, and it has the 7 by 7 tvachim. That's the yesh ba hechsher sukkah, means the 7 by 7. Again, Rashi writes 7 by 7 and a bit. Here, ksheda. Now, guys, let me tell you something. This is amazing. What does ksheda mean? We need to have our teacher Rashi. Not ksheda if you are sitting on top of the platform. Avade. There's no chiddush to that. Ksheda here means the ganze sukkah is kosher. Even the people that are going to be sitting, eating, sleeping in the area that is unplatformed, they are in a kosher sukkah. Ooh, why? Look inside the Rashi, 5 lines under the Gemara. Ksheida zok the Rashi, kol hasukkah. Because since sheyesh ba gimel defanois, now v'hai hechsher sukkah, when the Gemara says it's kosher, afila mino itztaba v'hala. It's even when you are not on the platform. Why? First of all, you make the sukkah kosher by counting only the area that's on top of the platform. And the nimtza doifenam soy kol kosher. Even the side walls that go beyond, in our picture in the Gemara, it goes lower than the platform, right? Why would that be kosher? So, Chevre, this is the first time we are being introduced to a din that we will have on Daf Yutes. And here are the words. Let's chazer remember the words. Psol. Psol means chach. Psol hayoytzim en asuka nidoin kesuka. Psol hayoytzim en asuka nidoin kesuka. The case there will be, now I want you to know there are exceptions to this. But that's the rule. You have a sukkah. Everything is the right dimensions. This chach goes beyond the walls. You can be outside the wall, under the schach. Why is it kosher? Because since it's schach of a kosher sukkah, you are under schach of a sukkah. So the Gemara is really saying that this is no different than that, even though that is about there aren't 3 walls, there's only 1 wall. Here we're speaking about the schach is lamayla me'esrem amma. One might have argued it's not even kosher schach. It was kashered because of the itztaba. Beautiful. Okay, weiter. Next, let's go to the next case. Now, aber umin hatzad, right? You got that? Umin hatzad means the platform was put on the side, and here we have in the Gemara picture number 2, the lower picture, right? It's taba min hatzad, which means same size. It's taba 7 by 7 tfachim, or 7 and 7 and a bit, whatever the minimum size is needed here. Problem is, look at the picture. How many walls does that area have? Only 2 walls. Only 2 walls. So how would it even be kosher? So now, if from the side of the platform, in our Gemara it's what's in middle. It's the side that's unwalled. If between there and the left wall in our picture, there are 4 amas or more, it's not under 4 amas, you don't have the din of the doif and akuma, as we'll explain in a moment. So then, shkoyach that you have the right width and length, shkoyach that you have the minimum height, it's not beyond the maximum height, but you only have 2 walls. So it's going to be psula. But, if it's pachos me'arba amas, if the space, the width between the open side of the istaba, where there is no wall, and the actual wall is less than 4 amas, ksheida. Let's read inside Rashi. Here it's 2 lines under the Tosfos in Rashi, and the widest lines of Rashi. Pachus midalad amas ksheida. Why? Then we'll say where. Where is not so simple, but why? Sha'af hu ksheida. The istaba area will be kosher because the kaimalan davav halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that we can kasher a sukkah, this is the walls, through akimas doifen. Now guys, there is a wall. If you were to view the schach, which is above 20 amas, not kosher schach, but if you were to view that as a continuation of the wall here in our picture of the left side, so there's a wall, the wall goes all the way down to the ground. I know that the wall is higher than 20 amas, I know that. And make believe as if the schach is really the wall, but it bended. What are we benefiting from that? As long as the bent wall goes directly above the edge of the platform, here is where Kevan's picture is great. That's the key here. The edge of the wall, of the halachic wall, is going until exactly the top of the edge of the platform. We consider that to be a wall. How is the wall touching the third side? From the top. How is it touching it from the top? Because it's above the edge of the platform. And since above the edge of the platform, this wall, and therefore the schach, is not above the maximum height, this is a wall. However, over here, can you eat under a wall? No, you can't. So unlike the first case we read inside the Rashi, that since the sukkah is koshered through the itztaba, you can eat in the entire sukkah even when you are not on the platform because of the rule of psal hayotzim min hasukkah nidan kisukah. In the second case, even when it's within less than 4 amas from the wall, yes, that's the halacha l'mishinai, that doifen akuma, you can only eat on the platform, because outside the platform, you're not under the schach. You can't get it both ways. It's not schach. You're under a wall. Gavaldik. Let's read it inside. Okay. Now, the Gemara is challenging this, not challenging the din. The Gemara's challenge will be, who even needed in the Amoraim, in the Gemara, to write such a din? We already know that. We know the din of Doifen Akuma. Check the Gemara, the last din has no chiddush. And it's a limited din. It's not you can't even eat in the whole sukkah. The chiddush is the Amrin and Doifen Akuma. I need that for the Gemara. I know that from a Mishnah. Daf Yud Zayin. Here's the case, common case. You have a home, and a part of the roof flew off. Common then, maybe common in certain places now. And the homeowner says, Gavaldik, there's no roof, I'm putting schach. What would be the issue? There's only one issue, that you have to have walls to the schach. And the roof, it's not that the ganzer roof is off. Only the Yamulka part of the middle of the roof is off. It doesn't go from wall to wall, from wall to wall. So the Mishnah writes, Im yesh min ha'koisel l'sichach dalad amis. Oh, that's a good picture. If there's 4 amis or more, then psula. In other words, what is the Mishnah telling us via inference? That ha'pachus mikan, right, the second line under the pictures, it's ksheira. Why would it be kosher? The schach is not touching the walls. The answer is because of the din of doifen akuma. So we already know it from Mishnayos. Says the Gemara, no, there's a novelty here. If we only would have left the Mishnah on Daf Yud Zayin, since the walls, guys, listen, this is very important. The walls as they are, they meet the required height. They're not taller than the required height. The only issue is that the schach is not adjacent with the wall. Now I want you to know there are various madregas in a wall being good. There is something that's b'chlal not a wall, that we'll learn on Amud Beis. Anything that's less than 10 tfachim is b'chlal not a wall. Then you have something that's a wall, but it doesn't fit the requirements of a sukkah, which is when the wall is above 20 amas. And in the case of the Mishnah Yud Zayin, it's the best of the best. It's a wall, it's a doifen that's not beyond the maximum height. It has the minimum height. There's only one issue. The schach doesn't go to it. So the Mishnah that's the first step where you have the din of doifen akuma. Here we're extending that. Let's read it inside. Avol hachem, over here, the loichazia ledoifen. It is a doifen. But it's not a halachically sukkah dikadoifen. Why? Because that wall goes above 20 amas. The only way, in other words, we're using doifen akuma to create a sukkah wall. Maybe we would not have said that. Eimoloi. Because you understand what we needed to do with that picture over there with the edge. In other words, it's only considered the wall because we are saying that since we say doifen akuma, and therefore we consider the schach, the wall, since the edge of that area of the schach, which physically doesn't end, we are creating a halachic edge. We're saying that the area that's exactly above the edge of the platform, that is where wall ends and schach begins. That is punkt over there by the edge, that's 20 amas. Less than 20 amas above the ground, or it's not above 20 amas above the ground, and Komash, that we can say that. Next case, guys, Zayin, the Zayin of the Ein Mishpat. Okay, Sukah, schach is above 20 amas. And now this person is building a platform, be'emtsa isa means it's not abutting any of the walls. The platform has the minimum share of 7 a bit tfachim, but it's not touching anything. So here again, says the Gemara about doifen akuma, im yesh misvas itztaba. That's the edge of the platform. Uledoifen means to 3 walls, or to the 2 walls and a bit. You have 4 amas, in other words, not less than 4 amas. L'chol ruach aruch, then psula. But if it's pachos me'arba amas, then it's kesheira. And here the Gemara says, okay, now what's the chiddush over here? Maiko mashmalan do amrin and doifen akuma. I got it. The Mishnah in Yud Zayin is not enough, but we just said that above. No, says the Gemara. Mal the teimam that doifen akuma, the way we are applying it, the fact that doifen akuma is actually going to create a sukkah dik doifen is miruach achas omrinon. One might have thought, Abel kol ruach v'ruach, das nicht, kamash v'lon, das ya. Okay, next case. 3 lines from the bottom. This is great. Hoysa pachusa meyutfachim. The minimum, yeah.
Seemingly, when it's a doifen akuma, you're extending the wall from where the schach would end above the platform till the floor. So wouldn't that then make it higher than 20 amos if you count it from there?
No, we get to count it wherever it's advantageous to us. We don't want to count it, Rabbi Chaim, over the platform because, like we said, you cannot sit under a wall. And if you're going to have to use the space over the platform, if the platform only has the exact minimum size, then you're stuck. The point is that we can use the edge as the boundary. So we only measure from the edge, not from the floor, from the platform. And on the other hand, you can sit all the way up until the edge.
So it's like an imagination wall there.
It's an imagination. Well, it's not it's that we are applying we're not beyond the maximum height because of the edge of the platform. And the wall is the wall that's all the way to the left. As long as it is, pachus midal adamas. We'll get used to these dinim. It's not imaginary. The Torah says so. Good.
So in the case of the square in the middle, Rabbi.
Square in the middle, yeah.
So you could sit on the platform directly under that square and you're fine. But if you go anywhere outside of it, then you would not be fine.
Very good to say that, exactly. And all of that makes us appreciate the first picture case the best. Where there, you can not only sit on the platform in the first picture, you can sit all the way as long as you are under schach because you're not using the din of the doifen akuma. And using the din of psala yitzim and asukah, nidon kisukah. Now, 3 lines from the bottom. So you don't even have the minimum height. And here, the way you will resolve it, not by making a reduction, is by making an addition. What are you adding? Now, we're not going to go into the... Now we're going, adira b'tachtoinim, also in the positive. Now we're bringing kedusha. That's the kuf, the letter kuf, the line goes under the earth. That's a holy thing, in the right way. So now, you're digging a pit in the middle of its floor in order for you now to measure from the bottom of the pit to the height. Oh, you have the 10 tfachim. Now, what would you say right away? It's beautiful. Doifen akuma. Again, one thing we have clear. How wide and long does the pit have to be? We got the 7 by 7. We got that. Now, is it going to bother me that it's beyond the walls? Doifen akuma. No doifen akuma here. Gurnished. Here only lavud. Here says the Gemara like this: Im yesh misfas chakok ulakoisel 3 tfachim or more. If the space between the edge of the pit until the walls, that means if you're not going into the pit, the floor that you did not dig into is 3 tfachim or more, then it's puzzle because you don't have walls. Daf dalid amid base. But if it's pachus mishloisha tfachim, only when the space between the pit and the walls is less than 3 tfachim, only here do we say based on the rule of lavud, that what? That kesheda. Now before you jump and ask, why don't we use doifen akuma? I want to make another point over here. Before we get to that, we pointed out on Amadallah from the 2 pictures that are printed in the Gemara, the big nafkemina, case number 1 is you can sit psal hayotzim min aschach. You can sit everywhere. I want to ask over here. Here we're not using doifen akuma. Clear, we're using lavud. No doifen akuma. So in the case where it's less than the 3 tfachim, and it's kosher because you have the walls, is a person allowed to eat in the part of the sukkah that's not in the pit? Here there's a big machlokes in Periscope, and I'll tell you why yeah and why. Why yes, clear, because psala yitzim and asukah nidon kisukah. There's no doifen akuma. Why not? Because what did Rava challenge Abaya? He told him that there's a concept called sukkah surucha. In other words, it's like a metzias. If you are living in an environment where you don't even have 10 tfachim to the roof, it's unpleasant. Remember that? So because of that unpleasantness, perhaps many say that over here also, even though we don't need doifen akuma, you will only be allowed to eat in the pit. That's a big topic over here, but let's go on. The main question will be the top line. Mishnah Hassan, in the previous ruling, what was the measurement that we tolerated, that we accepted, was as long as it's less than 4 amos. Why is that? Because doifen akuma. U'maishna hachado amrat, that you have to have only lavud, pachus mishloisha tfachim is valid. All right. Answers the Gemara. I'll tell you why. This is very important. Doifen akuma means you have a doifen. So there's madregas. I'm not even talking about a doifen that's valid for a sukkah. You have to have a wall. Over here, you have a wall. There's a problem. The problem is that the wall for a sukkah is not legally valid because it goes beyond the 20 amos. Fine. So now that we use doifen akuma, that was the chiddush, and you can count from the edge of the platform. Since there, it's considered within the maximum height, it's considered a valid wall. You are beginning with avant, you're beginning with something. So therefore, pachus mi arba amoy sagya. But over here, the wall of the pit, the wall of the sukkah before the pit doesn't even have 10 tfachim. And guys, that's very important. If something is not 10 tfachim high, it's not a wall. So you want to use doifen akuma to create a wall, not to create a sukkah dikavant. That you can't do. It's too much. You can't create a wall. But amazing is that lavud can create a wall. It's a much stronger din. That we consider it mamash going into the pit. So pachus mishleisha tfachim, based on a broader rule of lavud, of annexing, which is used in many areas in halacha, that yeah. But if you don't have the lavud because it's 3 tfachim or more, then you can't have a doifen akuma when you don't have b'chlal a doifen. And that's very important. We're going to mention soon we're going to speak more about this in a moment. Okay, next case. Back to the original issues. You're beginning with the sukkah whose schach is beyond, above the 20 amos. And now, ubanda ba'amud, you built a pillar, not a platform. We'll see in a moment where are we going with this. And shuhu gavoya asara tvachim. The platform that we spoke about in Amud Aleph doesn't have 10 tvachim height. And as we just mentioned, that anything that's not even 10 tvachim to begin with is not a doifen. The new din that we will introduce right now, called gud asik mechitzta, that once you already have a mechitza, we could view it as if it goes all the way up. You only can say that if you have a doifen. So the Gemara could have said the same thing with a platform, but people did not build platforms on that height, but it was common for a pillar. Here's the key. The pillar has 10 tfachim. And another important detail, what about the top of the pillar's width and length? It has to have 7 by 7 again. It has that. The yesh b'hechsher sukah. Now, since you already have the walls of the pillar itself, see, the pillar is above the ground, forget about doifen akuma, forget about lavud. Now we have a new instrument to use. And what is that? The din of gud asik mechitzta. If gud asik mechitzta means that halacha lo meishem Sinai, that we view as if the walls go all the way up until the schach. If it's viewed that way, I don't even need the doifen akuma. I can have it much more than 4 amos away. I got myself 4 walls. Let's read it. Perfect. That you have the din of good asik mechitzta. So you raise, you are raising the external parts of the pillars all the way up until the schach. We're speaking about the top of the platform. The top of this pillar has the 7 by 7, and you're good to go. It's good. And let me go further. Based on what we learned in Amud Aleph, if we're going to say that, then you would be allowed to eat in anywhere in the sukkah. Because psalei yitzim in sukkah, nidin kesukkah. You're not using it in of a doifen. However, amalei rava to abai.
Is there a limitation to the amount of space that we apply that rule with? So hayitzim in sukkah.
We'll learn.
A little 7 by 7, and now you can have a whole, huge sukkah around it. You're telling me that would.
Let's speak about this more. There are many exceptions to it. I just wanted to bring that up there. It's just to have that klal. Once you don't use the din of a doifen akuma, it's better. Okay, so Amalei Rava, in the din of good asik mechitzta, there's another rule. The in and mechitzas hanikara is like according to Rava. You know, it's when you have a noticeable wall. Now, how noticeable does it have to be? We'll see there are many levels. The normal wall is where you have a physical wall in between two environments. There's a place to the right, there's a place to the left. If the wall is not 10 tefachim high, we never say good asik. Remember that. That's why it's taba. That's why in Amud Aleph we didn't bring this in. Once the physical wall is 10 tefachim or taller, that is where you say good asik mechitzta. But Rav is saying that a pillar, we're going to have some case that's in between the wall on the ground and a pillar. But a pillar, it doesn't look like a wall. It's a pillar. There is nothing on the other side of the wall, of the sides, there's no hollow in there. You're not using it anywhere as it's just a tall pillar. Rava considers that the din of good asik mechitzta cannot be said from a pillar. And now it's very logical now, the sequence. Now the Gemara is going to give a case where maybe even according to Rava, who demands mechitzos hanikaros in order for us to be able to apply the good asik mechitzta I'll speak it out by heart. What happens if you have a building, an apartment building, and the side walls of the building, they are the walls for the houses, for the apartments in it? That's called the mechitza hanikaros. It's not like the pillar that's one solid piece of wood. And now someone on the roof is going to build a sukkah. Could we use the side wall of the building as a wall for the sukkah because of good asik mechitzta? It's not as nikaros as a proper bona fide wall, but it's not like a pillar. It's not like a pillar because here, again, inside the house, you are using the exterior wall as a proper mechitza. Let's read it inside. So here's already a machlekes tanoim, and there's a question how to understand it. Tana Rabbanon. No'atz arba'a kundesin. A kundes is some sort of a beam, mamish like in the picture over here. So a person will plant 4 beams, each one, as we'll see in a moment, on a side, on the edge of the wall. We'll see on the edge. But let's begin with the edge. And v'sichach al gabon. And now you put schach on top of it. You did not build any walls. Rabbi Yaakov, the Tanach, says that's a bona fide kosher sukkah, machshir, the chachamim, poislim. Now, is this case that these kundesin were placed on the edges or not? Now we'll go into that. Amar Rav Huna, I want you to know, Rav Huna is making two statements. Statement number 1 is that their machlokes is only when the kundesin were placed on the sfas hagag. These poles were implanted at the edges. And the edges means there was less than 3 tefachim between the pole and the edge. And that's the whole point that Rabbi Yaakov holds, that we say good asik mechitzta. And the guys, Rava, this does not challenge Rava. It's not a wall that's going to the side, that way you just have to heighten, but the side of the building is a mechitza for those who live in the building. It's considered already a noticeable enough mechitza. Yes, good asik mechitza, better than the pillar. And the Rabbanan hold, that will be nacharaya l'Rava, that lo yamrinen good asik mechitza, because the Chachamim hold that from those who live on the roof, they don't notice the walls. It's like the pillar. Good asik mechitza means that once you already have a mechitza on your height that's going 10 tefachim or more, then we make it's as if it goes all the way up, and if the schach is on top of that ear space, you got yourself a great wall. But here you don't notice it. Next statement of Rav Huna, he speaks it up.
It's about whose perspective you use.
Yes.
There's the person himself or someone outside.
Correct, or the person underneath it. And again, it's better than the pillar. L'kul ha'alma, it's better than the pillar. Now,
well, according to Rabbanan, it's the same as the pillar.
Correct. Okay. Even here, it's still not going to be good. Aval be'emsa gag, second statement of Rav Huna, if the pillars, be'emsa just means that it's 3 tefachim or more away from the sides. Now, divrei hakol psula. Why? I read inside the Rashi. She'ein tachteha mechitzos saviv. Underneath it, there's no mechitzas. Divrei hakol psula. And what's the point? There's a big point there, as we'll see in a moment. V'loidaya ba'arbas hakundesin, to say that these poles are considered mechitzas. What would even be the Havamina? Ooh, we'll see. But that's Rav Huna. Rav Nachman argues. Back in the Gemara. Rav Nachman, no. Boom, fakert. The whole argument is Dafka be'emsa gag machloikes. 1 second. What are you talking about? How can it be? How can you have a Rabbi Yaakov that's machshir? You don't have walls. So let me speak it out right now. Guys, remember we learned by Eiduvin, we learned in Shabbos, the din of the Pasei Birois. What's the Pasei Birois? That they built, especially for Yidden that were going from Bavel to the Beis Hamikdash on the street of Golem, plus people traveled on roads, and one of the things people need when they travel is water. So one option is to schlep all the water with you. That's very difficult. And to facilitate people traveling, they dug out wells, water deposits on the path, which would enable people while they're traveling to go have water. Now, when people needed to rest on the side of the road for Shabbos, the issue is that inside the well is the number of Shusayachit. We're speaking about wells. Let's go back to the dinim over there that we had in Shabbos, 4 by 4 tfachim, right? And 10 tfachim tall. 4 by 4 ames, I take that back. 4 by 4 ames and 10 tfachim tall. That was the din of Rosh Hashanah for Hilchos Shabbos. If you're bringing the water to outside the well, even if it's not at Rosh Hashanah, even if it's not at Rosh Hashanah, it's going to have a din of a carmelis. So the Chachamim made the following solution, and if Kevin you can find a picture, is that they build right angle beams known as pasei berois. Right angled means that each side of this piece of wood had 1 amma here and 1 amma there. As long as it went 10 tfachim above the ground, as long as there wasn't, I think it was 16 amas, I forgot the exact share, in between the open space of one and the other of these pasei berois, we view as if there are walls connecting these beams. And that's the way Rav Nachman understands the machlokes over here. No one is even dreaming here. We're not focusing now on the din of good asik mechitzta, but Rabbi Yaakov is machadesh that we can view the poles, as we'll see in a moment, even if the poles, these kundesen, are round, we, so to say, we chisel away the roundness, we create a square, and then the square itself, we carve out in our minds the inner part of the square, only leaving the right angle. If you have pictures, that will be helpful. And even though it's not an am, it's only 1 tefach, it's considered a wall. We consider the tefach from this pole to the tefach of the other pole as if it's sectioned off. That is the sheet of Rabbi Yaakov. Now the Gemara
I don't have a picture, sorry, Rabbi.
Okay, say that. And now
I just sent it to you.
And now 1 second. Now it says the Gemara, when they heard Rav Nachman, Elyahu, is Rav Nachman saying that only be'emsa gag machloikes, whether you use this concept of making from the poles walls. Chachamim say not. Very good, that's pasei berois. Avol, but there's another picture soon for our case of the Sukah. Avol al sfas hagag. But if the poles would have been implanted at the edges, everyone will hold its kosher, because everyone would subscribe to good asik. And yes, Danny, even according to Rava, again, because this is better than the pillars. Oidilma, that it's not that Rav Nachman is disagreeing completely. He holds bein bezu machloikes. Sai, whether you say good atzich mechitzta, sai, whether you say this concept of halachically filling in the spaces in between the poles, rendering them into bona fide walls, teku. Now, for this will be a question, and it's going to be a refutation against Rav Huna. We will first start to focus on the second statement of Rav Huna, who explicitly said that be'emsa hagag divrei hakol psula. How can that be? Clearly not. I'll tell you where I claim, because there's another brayse that quotes this machlokes, and it's not by the roof. There is no good asik mechitzta there. The case there is not dalit kundesin ba'aretz. That's it. And still there is a machlokes. There is nothing to use as a mechitza going up. V'sicha chal gabam. Rabbi Yaakov is machshir. V'rachachamim poislam. Now, for ha'eretz kidei be'emsa hagag dami. How can you, Rav Huna, say Avol be'emsa hagag divrei hagag psula yet v'kol machshir Rabbi Yaakov? And indeed, because of that, tiyufta the Rav Huna tiyufta. The Gemara says, you know what? Sometimes when you tiyufta someone, you're not quiet. Let's even say that it refutes what Rabbi Yaakov said in the beginning. What Rav Huna said in the beginning, the first statement of Rav Huna. Rav Huna said that machloikes al sfas hagag v'oid be'emsa hagag hu depligi. should we not infer avol sfas hagag divel hakol ksheda, so that it will also be a tiyufta anafuna? And by the way, there's an in-between, there's another thing the Gemara is being manamas to, that we just had a boya deloy ifshita, l'rav Nachman, whether there is a machlekes also in this case. If we were to infer that sfas hagag divrei hakol ksheda, then we would actually clarify that when Rav Nachman said be'emsa hagag, it was only be'emsa hagag. So says the Gemara, so for that the Gemara says not. No. You refuted me. But my first statement is not refuted, and therefore the boya on Rav Nachman still stands. Maybe pliga be'emsa hagag v'hodin al sfas hagag. You can't make that inference. The komifligi be'emsa hagag. Right, koyach the heteda adif is to tell you the chiddush. Koyach the Rabbi Yaakov tafilu be'emsa hagag, where you don't have the good asik. You don't have any good asik. Still, Rabbi Yaakov is machshir. And why is he machshir? Let's put that whichever picture, even if you have the Pasi Beroi's picture, because the same idea that we learned, that they were lenient by creating a halachic wall in between the beams by Hilchas Shabbos. Now, guys, in the picture that you have over here, if someone can check, I think it was 16 amas or 16.6 amas. There is a max of how much open space you can have in between the pillars. But what's very important there is that each side of the pillar is 1 amma. And here we're being a lot more lenient. Let's read inside the Gemara. Let's quote this Braisa. There is no good asik mechitzta. No, you can leave the picture up. And v'sichech al gaban. And you put schach on top. Rabbi Yaakov says, now here is we're being more specific, that royin kol sheilu yechakeku. You know, it's the poles. Even if normally when you speak about a kundes, it's referring to a round pillar, a round pole. Fine. You have to carve out the excess, making a square from the circle. Now it has to be such a large circle that in it you have the square. That as long as you are able to do a hakika, to hew out the roundness of the pole, creating it into a square-shaped pole. That's the first royin step. Second royin step is, and now v'yecholko, if there's another picture that will be helpful, now you have to split it from the inside. Splitting it from the inside means that now that you have this block square, hew out and only remain with the right angle. That's what we're looking for. And as long as each side of this right angle, v'yesh behem tefach lekan v'tefach lekan, not an amad, only a tefach, but you need an amad. That's the vort of Rabbi Yaakov. Then nidoinen, then we apply the din of a diyomed, right? Or as it was called in Masechtas Eruvin daf chai, diyum din in the plural. The Yemen means is that even though there's only one tefach here and one tefach there is a certain max of how much open space can you have in between it. We view it, if it doesn't go beyond, that it's walled off. So holds the Rabbi Yaakov. Shahoya, the imla, but even if the circle would afford you the tefach mikan v'tefach mikan, but you are unable to go through both of these steps, because once you take away the roundness, if you remain with this halachic square, if there isn't a tefach mikan v'tefach mikan, even Rabbi Yaakov won't be that lenient. Rabbi Yaakov oimer, that unlike by Shabbos, the din of the diyomedim demands for an amma. By Sukah, diyomed Sukah is enough to have a tefach. However, the Chachamim hold, that's the Chachamim against Rabbi Yaakov. No, you need to have bona fide walls. Now, we speak about 3 walls, so that we'll learn later. True, once you have 2 proper walls, the 3rd wall is enough for it to be a tefach. But you have to begin with 2 proper walls. There is where we say 1 tefach suffices. But if you don't have any valid walls, or you don't have 2 valid walls, then the Chachamim do not use the dinim that they agree with in Shabbos regarding the Pasei Berois. They don't apply it over here. Now, there's just a very important insight from Rab Chaim Brisker, just explaining how, we're learning the dinim of mechitzas by a sukkah. We already had a couple of dinim where where you contrast that with various dinim mechitzas by Hilchas Shabbos, and they don't go on the same track. And here are his words, beautiful words. When it comes to Hilchas Shabbos, the purpose of a mechitza is hekif makim. You want to create a Reshus HaYachid. And to create an area to separate it from the Reshus HaRabim, to separate it from the Karmelis, it has to be a surrounded area. The goal is to surround the area. He says, by Sukah, we are looking to create a din doifen. So, let's apply it over here. Even the Chachamim against Rabbi Yaakov hold that we do say Pasi Birois. And don't focus on the Tefach versus the Amma. It's because if you have those 4 pillars around the well in middle, you go take a look at it. It's a surrounded area. It's good. It's a heck of makom. By a sukkah, there's a din doifen. This is not called a wall. See, the area is surrounded. Even if you wouldn't see the dots on the ground, it does do some sort of hekif. But minigei sukkah here, you have to have a wall. And a wall means a wall. Once you have a wall, we already said, then you can add to it, you're good asik. Once you have a wall, you can have a concept of doif and akuma, but you can't create a wall. You can't create a wall out of beams, and therefore they hold that it's puzzle. And we'll stop over here, God willing, to be continued.